Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar event. My name is Joshua. I'm going to be your presenter today. I hope my audio is coming through loud and clear. It appears to, according to the program, that it is, but hopefully everybody can hear me loud and clear here. We're got a busy topic here to talk about today. Before we get started on all that, welcome to today's event. A few technical things before we get started on our topic. Click the little red arrow on the sidebar of your webinar control panel to minimize that, or drag it off to your second desktop to get it out of the way. We're here today. This is a 30-minute event today. I just want to point that out. It is normally our webinars are 20 minutes, but today's topic is lengthy, and so we've allotted 30 minutes. I don't know if folks recognize that in the confirmation email that you had received from us, but this is a 30-minute webinar event today. If you're planned only on 20 and you've got to go, we are recording it. It will be out on our support center page here, resource center page, excuse me, that's what it's called now, sometime within the next 24 to 48 hours, if not sooner, for you to review later if you wish. Please type questions into the questions portion of the webinar control panel for me. I will do my best to keep an eye on those. I may not be able to get to the questions until the very end of the event, so if you can stick around, I'll be happy to see what I can do to get those answered for you. If it's about your particular setup or data, I may have to push that off to a support call for you, not because I don't want to answer it, I just may not have enough information to do so. Please keep the questions on topic, meaning about our topic for today, which is basically for setting up payroll, essentially, basic payroll setup. The topic we're using today is taken from P101 workbook, pages 2 to 23, okay? So if you have the P101 workbook, by all means follow along with page through to 23 with me. That is what I'm using as the printed material for the day today. If you don't have the workbooks, you can get those from the workbook page on our website. I also would like to point out that basically if we go into help here, I think this works. I didn't check this, but it should. Yes, right here, easy steps to begin using payroll, albeit this shows 9, not 7. The workbook shows 7, but essentially the same things that I'm listing here are what we're doing in our topic. So you've got it at your fingertips in the payroll module regardless, okay? Just 9 there. We haven't updated the help files versus the workbook topics. So we're here to talk about setting up payroll, okay? So basic payroll setup, and that's what we're going to talk about. So it's really it's kind of a beefy topic, but it's one that's really important. We get this question a lot from folks, okay? We're starting in payroll. Where do I start, okay? So these, we're just going to kind of start from the edge. We've got a database here of payroll, so we've already got some stuff set up, but we're going to follow along with each one of these 7 steps that's on this document here and go through each one of them, because when you install payroll for the very first time, these are the things, and you open it, these are the things that you have to deal with in order to get payroll set up, okay? Okay, so let's go into here, system profile. So when you launch payroll for the very first time, and it opens to the window called System Profile. It's this window, okay? And what it does here is it opens to, well, it shows us the payroll year that we're in. So if we were to install it, it would show 22, but it will show us all of our previous payroll years here because we have, well, years worth of data, okay? But if you're installing payroll for the first time, the only year you would see would be 22, okay? We have built-in pay labels, regular overtime, additional, vacation, and sick time. Okay, these can be changed, but just be aware that these are a global setting and that they're true on everybody's paycheck. Okay, these are not employee-specific. These are pay labels that show on everyone's paycheck, and so you want to be careful about how you relabel these. We would typically recommend leaving them as things like, regular overtime, additional, maybe change vacation or sick time to something like PTO, but typically you don't want to be much more specific than that, okay? Enable transfer to Church Windows. So if you use Church Windows accounting and you're going to be transferring payroll into accounting, you're going to want to check this box and you're going to want to set your path, okay? And what that does on page 3 is that details how you can find your payroll path to church windows by right-clicking over your church windows shortcut, the stained glass window icon, go to properties, and notating what it says in that start inbox. And that's what then shows up under our path down here, okay? If we click apply after choosing, or you can use the browse button here to the right to browse to that, okay? So once I choose the path, then I would click apply. If it accepts my apply, then it's found a valid accounting database. If not, then maybe we have to revisit and check that path again. But that does set the path between church windows and accounting, and then once we have got that, we click apply and OK, and we now have the ability to transfer and link payroll and post it into our accounting database. Okay, so if we go back to the system profile again, we're going to now go on to page 4 and talking about the organization info tab. Okay, so this is where you would set the basic organization information. Your default withholding state for the church. The country, of course, it's going to typically default to the USA, and then you would put in all the church information, name, address, city, state, phone number, email address, and this is where you would enter the federal and state tax ID information, okay? Pretty straightforward, but the software requires, before we can do anything in payroll, it requires that at least you enter the organization name, okay? You can always come back in here and populate this with the rest of the information later if you wish, but you've got to at least, in order to get through the system profile upon installation, you've got to at least enter the organization name, okay? So now we're going to click over on our Aeft Ach Info tab. This is basically the page where we would enter if the church is going to consider using the direct deposit or creating a direct deposit file that Church Windows Payroll produces. This is where you would enter the church's bank information, okay? So, company identification, it typically is going to use the tax ID unless specified by your financial institution otherwise. This is where you would enter the church's routing and account number information, bank name, organization name, entry description, required in most cases, and some of this other information here may be required, but only if stipulated by your financial institution or bank, as the case may be. So again, this is where the church's bank information would be entered for that EFT file for direct deposit. On the Aeft Ach Overrides tab, if we determine that the default settings that are set up in Church Windows Payroll don't work and your bank can identify exactly where the problem occurs, this Aeft Ach Overrides can be used to make changes to the structure setup of the NACHA compliant file that Payroll produces, and should be able to get that to work with your bank's system, but only if the bank can provide you or articulate for you exactly what's wrong with the setup as our payroll software produces it. Not going to spend a lot of time on that. Go to the additional e-file information, and finally on the W2, W3 e-file, that's what this is basically referring to, talks about, is basically where we would enter information about the church if we are planning on e-filing or creating an e-file for either the Social Security Administration or to submit to your state, as the case may be. So if you'll be using the electronic filing function in the payroll software, which we would certainly encourage all of our payroll users to do, you will definitely want to fill out this page. Pardon me. It will not let you create the SSA e-file, the file for SSA e-filing without this information being populated. So the software does have built-in warnings, and you can copy the organization information. So if I click on copy organization information, notice it does bring in the information I have on the organization info tab, but I would need to populate with the rest of the email address, phone number, contact name, and signatory name. Okay, all of these fields are required. So I would need to populate that and fill that in. We're going to click apply and OK. That is our organization info tab. Okay, system profile. System profile. That is step 1, okay, of our 7 steps. 2, deductions file. So the deductions file can be found by going right here to data setup and 3 items down, deductions file. We're going to talk about the allowances file right after this. So basically, deductions are representative of monies that are deducted from employee checks, not for tax withholdings, but for things like, if we click on ours, like I said, we've got a database that's constructed here. So it would be for things like health insurance contributions for employees, dependent care, flex spending, or pension with deductions. Okay, anything that typically the employee voluntarily participates in that is deducted from their paycheck are going to be set up here. And it is simple as clicking on the button here in the upper right that says Add, and it opens up the Add deduction that we see on the bottom of page 6 down there. Okay. Again, this is deductions, not tax withholdings. They are different. Tax withholdings are set up as part of the systematic setup in the employee file that we're going to get to here in a little bit. Okay. Bottom of page 6, this is really, really important, is that it is important to note that if more than one person gets the same deduction, you do not need to set up separate deductions for each person. Okay. We can use the same deduction for multiple employees. Notice there's no amounts that are asked for here. Okay. So when we go into our employee file, you're going to see that we've got the same deduction assigned to multiple employees. Okay. Even something we're going to see under housing allowance when we go to allowances. Don't need to set up different housing allowances for different pastors because the conditions are the same for all of them. The taxable status is. Only if they had different reportable or taxable status, statuses would we need to then set up either different deductions or allowances. Okay. So it again, set up one deduction, assuming it's the same conditions for everyone. Okay. And it talks about that on the top of page 7 is about how the amounts are added or the percentages are added on the employee file, not here. Okay. So you would enter the description, choose the frequency that it's deducted. Is it to show separately on the W-2 form? If so, which box number and code if applicable? And is the money to be included in the wages or is it considered taxable? That's essentially what that's asking for. This is a good time to show here that we're not in allowances in detail. If you would like more assistance in terms of how the deductions and deductions and allowances are set up, go back to the Church Windows website, go to our resource center and type in the key phrase or word FAQs, and you're going to see a document here called Payroll Setup. FAQs are frequently asked questions. Okay, this document will detail a whole lot of setup with regards to the taxable setup of things like allowances and deductions. Okay, it is here 24/7. You can access that at any time. Okay, and it does. It just opens up a PDF document that details and talks about ministers and allowances, independent contractors, deductions, allowances, housing allowance, even taxable status of certain things down here, allowances or deductions. So very, very helpful and useful document. Okay. So just want to bring that to your attention. We're not going to be getting into the allowances and deductions any more than that. Okay. Allowances, when we go back to data setup and allowances file, it looks virtually identical to the deductions file, except allowances are monies that are paid to an employee in addition to their regular base pay or gross pay. Okay, so here we see a housing allowance for pastors, automobile reimbursement, a mileage reimbursement, group term life, for group term life taxes or income, imputed income for folks as needed. But again, clicking Add, same thing, entering the description, the frequency, does it show separately on the W-2 with the appropriate box number and code, and is it considered reportable or taxable? Okay. Similar as the other deductions, no amounts are added here. It will show grand totals for each one of them here. So right here under allowances, we look under monthly totals. It is showing how much we've paid to our pastor or pastors in the allowances for 2022. Okay. Again, no amounts here, and we're going to see this here because we got to get into our employee file. We got about 15 minutes left, and we're only about halfway through our material here. So data setup, we're on to item number 4 now under departments file. So right down here, if you've got a lot of employees to pay, you may choose to set up and categorize your employees into various departments. So if we click on that, I believe these are the ones that we build into the software automatically: pastoral, administration, music, youth, custodial. So if you've got multiple employees, that are employed in any one of these, and you can of course add additional departments if you wish. There's no requirement to use the departments for your employees, but if you've got a lot of folks, it might help you organize them and be able to select those particular folks to be paid by department when you're calculating your payroll. So if you want to add a new one, you simply click Add, you enter the department number, the description, and then click OK, and it adds it to the list. Okay, and we're going to see here in a minute where that department code can then be added to each one of the employee files if needed. No requirement though. Number 5, local tax wizard. Church Windows Payroll does not, has a local tax wizard that allows you to be able to set up a local tax if applicable for you. For those folks who don't have local taxes, good on you, but you'll have to bear with us while we talk about this here for just a couple minutes. So right here under data setup, local tax wizard. You have to find out what the local tax is for and what its conditions and terms are. If that means calling your local city hall or Department of Taxation or Department of Revenue, you'll have to do that. Okay, so we've got the 3 options: create a new local tax, edit an existing local tax, or delete an existing local tax. So basically here, if I choose to create a new one, and it automatically tells me the year, and it assigns the next available ID, and I'm going to type in, miscellaneous local tax, or let's do like SD, 123. So here, and it's literally follow the bouncing ball, folks. So there's some commonalities to local taxes, which we found here, and this is why we do this. There's no way we could possibly hold on and wait for every local district to send us their local tax structure, but there are some commonalities to it. Either it's typically going to be a school district tax or a flat rate tax. Okay, so again, is this a school district tax? If you say yes and click next, it pops up and asks for the rate and what the rate is based on which wages. If not, we would click no and go to next, and then it gives us different prompts. Okay, so again, once you have the information from your local taxing authority, you literally just have to follow the bouncing ball here to get that set up, and these may always be changed or edited, of course, too. So the only thing that this is ever going to ask you for is a percentage. It's never going to ask you to enter amounts. You can enter amounts at the employee file for local taxes, but again, it's usually based on a percentage and either flat or school district tax, flat rate or school district tax. Once we set that up, it would go, we would say, okay, local, city, other, county wages. Is the local tax the same rate on local wages, a flat rate tax? And again, depending on what I say, yes or no, I click next. And then here I would put in, say, my percentage, okay? So then once I do that, I simply click finish. That becomes, that then now is a local tax. I can now go into my employee files and employee records and add for those that it's applicable for, okay? All right, so now we're kind of in the heart of this here. So we got a lot of material to go through in the next 10 minutes or so. So let's kind of slam through this if we can. 6, entering people, employees, and independent contractors. Right here, near the top of our data setup menu, employee file, independent contractor file. Clicking independent contractor file, you literally click add in the upper right. It allows you to set up, enter their name, DBA, address information, tax ID number, what have you. What are they being paid for? Now, these are custom to these contractors, so you can customize the pay labels for the contractor, and you can back up federal and state withholding for them if you wish. Okay, most will not. I always like to remind folks, contractors can also, you can produce 1099s for contractors from accounting. You don't need payroll to do that. So as long as they're receiving a 1099 NEC, you can print those and pay those contractors from accounting and not record them through payroll, okay? Okay, so again, you could, if you choose to set them up in Payroll, that's where you can set up your contractors. Again, it shows withholding, totals that they're paid, for, by quarter and year to date, and then the dates paid if applicable. The real heart of this is right here under employee file. So we're now moving on to page 11 here on the employee file. So right here, to add a new employee, we simply click add in the upper right. Again, you can choose a department code for the employee if you wish. It is not required. Also, is the person a minister? If they are, you're going to check that. You would enter their name, address, information, city, state, social security number, enter their filing status per their W-4 form that you've received, that they've completed and presented to you. Okay? Once you've clicked OK through that, clicked OK through this, it adds that employee and their record right here to the list on the left. And what I mean by that is right here is where that line is drawn. Okay, so when the employee is added, their name gets added to that list, and then we have to fill out the rest of these tabs here in the bottom right, and that's what that's pointing out at the bottom of page 11 down there is the General 1, General 2, Federal, State, Local, etc. Okay? General 1, what is the pay type? Are they hourly, salaried, or are they terminated? Enter it accordingly. How often are they paid? Weekly, biweekly, monthly, semi-monthly? Also, standard hours, standard rates and hours per pay period. This is where we would enter a default pay rate, hourly, hours worked, or pay rate if they're salaried. Okay? As we see here for our senior pastor Larry, he's marked as a minister. He's salaried. We have his regular per pay rate entered here. And if you want to enter accumulating hours per pay period for vacation or sick time, you may certainly do that here. Okay. General 2, additional information about the employee, alternate address information, miscellaneous information like their date of birth or what is their job position. Was there a hired date that you want to track, or terminated, or last raised date and amount? Again, all optional information you can track about your employees. Emergency contact information. Who should they contact and who should we contact in case of an emergency? And finally, down here at the very bottom, use direct deposit, and this is where we would then enter the employee's account information for the direct deposit and any CHA file to include with our file to send to the bank. Okay. Again, use direct deposit would only be checked if you're going to be paying the employees using the direct deposit file that our payroll software produces. Okay. Talks about that in detail at the bottom of page 13 there. We're going to kind of breeze by that pretty quickly. We've got a direct deposit set up and paying using direct deposit video out on our website that you can access at any time under the Resource Center. Federal. This information is again should be taken from the employee's completed W-4 form. What is their filing status? Single, married, or head of household? Were they hired 2024, 2020 or later? And if so, using the 2020 W-4, entering the information accordingly. Okay. Is the minister wanting you to withhold their self-employment tax? Does the employee want to have an additional federal tax withheld based on either a fixed amount or a percent? And is there a retirement plan that we need to record and to check for box 13? Okay. All of this, folks, again, is taken, this should be all complete, well, the top portion of it should be all based on whatever they've got on completed on their W-4. Okay. State, very similar. Make sure that the default withholding state or the withholding state for the employee is correct. If, it may be that it's not the same as the church. If you've got employees that your church is in one state and the employee lives in the other, this may be different. And you would choose the appropriate filing status for your state if applicable. And using tax tables. Same would be true for federal. If the employee is wanting you to withhold federal tax or state, you're going to check the use tax tables. Okay. On our local tax tab is where we would then choose our local taxes. So right here, let's go to a different employee, Jimmy here. So Jimmy here, he's our part-time custodian and organist, is that maybe he's got local taxes in 2 different municipalities. City of Columbus and Pickerington School District. So it's going to withhold based on those percentages, but over here, if he wants me to withhold more for his local taxes, I can certainly enter that here. And we're seeing the year-to-date totals for the employee here in the bottom right corner. Deductions. So here's where we would then enter and choose deductions for our employees, and we would enter the amounts or the percentages. So we see here Larry clearly has health insurance, dental insurance, and a pension deduction, and he's choosing to enter both the amount and the percent, and for the pension just simply a 3%. And again, it shows year-to-date totals. And it is as simple as clicking right here in the first available ID box and choosing whatever deduction and entering the amount or percent to the right. And the same is true here for allowances. So here's our housing allowance for Pastor Larry and his flat rate automobile reimbursement that we enter and are paying to him on every paycheck, with a grand total or year-to-date total for those allowances in the bottom right. Okay. And then finally on our totals tab here, this shows our W-2/941 totals for the employee. So at the very, very top, it shows our year-to-date totals for wages and withholdings. So, federal gross taxable is box 1, federal withheld is box 2. Social Security is box, gross taxable is box 3, withheld is box 4, Medicare box 5. See, so this follows along with what the W-2 corresponds, and because he's a minister, nothing shows up for Social Security or Medicare, and only in federal, state, and or local. Then there's a breakdown for the employee by quarter, and that's true for everybody. So if we go now to Jimmy, he's going to show differently because he is a LACE person and he is paying in Social Security and Medicare, and the church is then matching it as well. And the totals there are covered at the bottom of page 18. We might run a couple minutes over, folks. I'm sorry about that. Again, you can revisit this video after it's released on our website if we do. Again, I apologize. Finally, number 7. Payroll accounting, linking, and account number setup. We kind of talked about the linking payroll to accounting initially, but once we have that done, that link is established, we link our employees by going here to System Administration and Account Number Setup. And page 19 does show kind of journal entries for payroll can be pretty complex, and it shows the breakdown of what is required in order to properly link each one of our employees. Okay, so here if we choose like a layperson, for Jimmy, we see their expense account here for their base salary. And then over here, the expense account that would represent the employer's match for Social Security and Medicare. And then down here, we would see the checking account, which is the credit side of the transaction, and the federal and state tax liabilities. And so again, these account numbers all need to be populated in order for us to be able to properly post and transfer payroll into our accounting software, okay? So at the bottom of page 19, it talks about expense accounts for things like salary and other compensation. So if we go back to Larry on our allowances tab, we notice here for his housing allowance and his mileage or flat rate automobile reimbursement that these are linking or debiting to expense accounts. Why? Because these are monies that are being added into their paycheck. Okay? Deductions are monies that are coming out of it, and we're going to typically either credit a liability or an expense account for those. Okay? So the account number linking becomes really vitally important in terms of, and we're looking at the account number setup window there on page 21 of those workbook pages. And again, folks, this is all detailed in these pages here under the help files as well. But the software will absolutely tell you when something is not properly linked into our into accounting properly. It basically says account is blank. It will not transfer anything of that pay date into accounting until we get that missing account or accounts under the debit or the credit side linked properly. Okay. If any of this occurs, you have questions about any of it, folks, please let us know. But this is really the final step of this process. But you want to make sure that you do it, because If you set up your employees, deductions, you get everything else done, and then you calculate your first pay, the software is not going to retroactively read those accounts if you enter them here. You'll have to either void the pay and recalculate it after entering the accounts, or you're going to have to link every one of those employees to their respective debit and credit accounts at the time you're transferring it into accounting. So definitely make sure to visit that final step on there for when linking your employees here to accounting before you calculate and post your first payroll. I just want to point out again, under System Administration, Help and Contents, for those folks who don't have the P101 workbook, this information right here, System Profile, adding new miscellaneous tax deductions, local withholding and allowances and deductions file, all of this information right here. So if I click on number 4, deductions and allowances, it opens up deductions and allowances. Okay? So it talks about, even in your help files, this same information, even though you may not have the workbook. And right here, linking payroll to Church Windows accounting. So right here, it talks about linking that and where and how to do that, okay? And so if you have questions or problems with any of this, folks, please call us at 800-533-5227. Myself, my other technicians are certainly available and happy to help at any time.